On today's Questions Answered, we're going to be reviewing a post on Reddit that features an Apollo making a curious noise. So we're going to watch down the video, and then we'll head over to the bike and investigate what we can do to resolve it. All right, let's watch the video. All right, I hear the noise already. It's a clear buzzing, grinding sound. And looking at the bike, I can tell it's an Apollo. It's an older Apollo that's had some modifications. It's got aftermarket tires and fenders, and the bike is a little bit dusty. And there's a little bit of dust and dirt on the tires and on the frame. So I think that's an indication of one thing to look into. So let's go over to the bike and talk about what we can do to troubleshoot. This kind of buzzing, grinding sound can be a common annoyance on belt drive bikes that are ridden in dirty conditions. And that's the first thing that I noticed in looking at the video, and something that I was looking for since I'm familiar with how to troubleshoot this, is how clean is the bike? Because a lot of the time, dirt or grime, specifically very fine grit and dust, can build up on the teeth of the belt, and you can hear the engagement of the teeth between the belt and the cogs, and that can make a grinding sound and a grinding sensation when you're riding. But it's a really easy fix too. Basically, all you need is to wash your belt and sprockets, and that'll eliminate the sound. Let's go through how to do that. Here we go. So basically, all you need to do is thoroughly wash your belt and sprockets. You can do this with a water bottle. Most of the time, if your belt's making noise or a grinding sensation, washing it will solve the problem. If you're still having an issue after that, it's time to look into some other causes. Another thing that could cause a grinding sound is a worn out belt and sprockets. It can take a lot of miles to get to that point, or just a lot of miles in gritty conditions, but it is possible to wear your belt, and that'll make it run really rough on the sprockets. Now, something I noticed on this bike is that it had aftermarket tires, which means that the rear wheel was off the bike at some point. So it's possible that the rear wheel was installed slightly askew, or something happened with the belt alignment or the belt tension during the process of taking the rear wheel on and off. So the next thing to check would be the rear wheel alignment. So the first thing that I want to do to check the rear wheel alignment is to make sure that the wheel is properly installed in the dropouts. And I'm going to do that by taking it off the stand and putting it on the ground. With the bike on the ground, take a 15mm wrench and loosen the rear wheel's axle nuts. You don't need to remove them, just loosen them enough so that the rear wheel is loose in the dropouts. So now, go ahead and put a little weight on the seat, and that will force the wheel all the way up into the dropouts as far as it can go. And now, with a little weight on the seat, go ahead and tighten those axle nuts down. When you're tightening these, be sure to tighten them enough so that the tool leaves an imprint in the palm of your hand. Nice and tight. Now that we know that the rear wheel is properly installed, we can rule out any askew installation as a cause of the noise. So if your bike is still making a noise at this point, it's time to check belt tension. And we always use the Carbon Drive app. It's free to download on whatever device you have, and it's really simple to use. Just follow the instructions in the app. We recommend a belt tension range of about 40 to 45 hertz. Way above that, in the high 50s, 60 range, you'll definitely get a buzzing sound and a grinding sensation when you're pedaling. And way below that, below 30, 20 hertz, it's possible to jump the belt in high torque situations. So the sweet spot is right around 40 to 45 hertz. If you're still getting a buzzing sound or a grinding sound after that, it's time to check alignment. The details of the following adjustments might vary a bit depending on your exact bike model, but the concepts remain the same. The belt tension and alignment of the belt need to be pretty close to perfect. So if you're struggling with the adjustment, please reach out. We're happy to provide support. If you have your belt tension sorted and you're still getting a grinding sound, it's time to check alignment. So if you've shifted your dropouts around, it's possible the rear wheel is sitting askew because the dropouts aren't in equal positions. So you can just take a look. A visual inspection should be enough to allow you to see if one of the dropouts is pushed further back than the other, and that might cause the wheel to sit crooked. And if the wheel is sitting crooked, the rear sprocket is also sitting crooked, and that means the belt might not be riding smoothly onto it. So you can check how far these adjustment bolts are inserted into the frame. If they're about equal on both sides, that's good. The next thing to check is the position of the sliders. If they appear to be in roughly the same position on both sides, great. The next thing to check is the position of the rear wheel relative to the chainstays. It should have just about equal spacing between the rim and the chainstay on both the drive side and the non-drive side. And it doesn't have to be down to the millimeter, but if it's way off to one side, if it's very crooked, then that could definitely be an issue. If you find that your dropouts are sitting askew, go ahead and grab a 4 and 5 millimeter Allen key, and we'll go through the adjustment here. Let's say, for the purposes of this explanation, that my wheel is sitting too far to the right, sitting too far to the drive side. So that means that I want to move this dropout slider forward to shift the wheel towards the left. Similarly, I want to pull the left or non-drive side slider back at the same time. So let's go through how to do that. Grab your 5 millimeter Allen key and loosen the slider bolts here. You just have to back these off enough so that the washers are sitting loose on here. So I'm going to do it to both sides right now. So now I'm going to use my 4 millimeter Allen key to do half a turn on this adjustment bolt. And then I'm going to pinch the belt, and that's going to pull the wheel forward. And you'd be surprised, a full turn will do a full millimeter of adjustment on this side, which ends up being a lot. So I usually go half turn at a time. And as I do half turn on this side, I'm going to do a half turn tighter on the non-drive side as well. And then I'm just going to go back and double check the location of my wheel now, and it has shifted over pretty significantly. Once you get it to be centered, then you can go ahead and lock down the slider bolts once again. And these ones, you want them to be around 12 Newton meters if you have a torque wrench at home. Otherwise, good and snug. Once you've snugged up the slider bolts, go ahead and snug up the tensioner bolt once again. That helps keep it from backing out when you're riding. Once you've made that adjustment and the wheel is aligned, then you want to go back and double check your belt tension again. If your belt tension ends up being a bit looser like it is for me, then you want to go ahead and make the adjustment on the belt tension. So that means moving both sliders back equally and checking with the Gates Carbon Drive app as you go to make sure you end up in that sweet spot of belt tension and the wheel maintains that alignment. If your belt tension is correct, the wheel is aligned, and everything is clean, the next thing to check is the belt alignment on your bike. So for this, you're going to need to drop the rear wheel again just to get the belt out of the way, and then reinstall the rear wheel and measure with a straight edge. So let's do that. All right, so I dropped the bike on the floor again to remove the rear wheel, and I also had to undo the shift cable, but I looped the belt off of the sprockets. It's still here on the bike. I haven't completely removed it, but it's just out of the way now so I can measure on the drivetrain. So you can use any really straight object for this, a straight edge, a yardstick, a T-square. I'm just using this Park Tool very straight object, we call it. So to take this measurement, you hold the tool flat up against as many teeth as you can on the front sprocket and out enough so that it can reach to where the rear sprocket is. And then you rotate with the crank, and then you check where the tool aligns with the edge of the teeth on the rear sprocket. And it should be within 1.5 millimeters or so. This is pretty much right on there, so the alignment is perfect. If you find that the alignment between your front and rear sprockets is significantly off, then that indicates a more serious problem. So if you do come across that, then please reach out directly to us and we'll be happy to help. Bikes make all kinds of sounds for a variety of reasons. And most of the time, it's not your belt drivetrain. But sometimes it is. So if you have any questions about any particular sound that your bike is making, film a video, send it to us, and we'll do our best to help troubleshoot with you. Our customer support team is happy to help.